the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. If you have cell phones, I'd appreciate it if you'd silence them, please. If you need a listening device, Tyler can help you with that. And we do have absentee voting next door, so we would appreciate it if you could limit the noise in the hallways in appreciation for that election that's going on. All right. First item is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. The next item is I'd consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second, Kipley.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. That takes us to regular business. The first item, item 10, is to consider a resolution in support of yard waste and compost site at the City of Valley Springs. Is there someone here to present on that? No. Good morning.
Name is Blaine Iltz. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Valley Springs, and is here to request a statement of resolution for being able to accept yard waste, grass and leaves to compost.
Are there any questions for Blaine?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Karski.
I'm curious why this is coming to us.
It is the last hurdle in a state required document, the permittation to go. It's the last required thing for the state.
Is it within the city limits of Valley Springs?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Was there, I haven't followed this at all. I mean, is this controversial? Any opposition? I mean, pretty much
No,
going
it's just
through?
something that they do some inspection type things. They called and said, if you want to continue to accept yard waste, go through a permit type deal.
Okay, okay.
Other questions? Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this for public comment? No one? I noticed that there were some questions about water runoff and things. Were all those issues addressed?
Yeah, that was the state's concern, is they don't want the stuff kind of running into surface water. And there's different maps and things that the state's required that's in the packet there. It shows kind of floodplains. Everything's been measured as far as away from surface water, and the ground's been built up where it will be accepted at.
Okay, and this is just to accept yard waste?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for coming this morning. All right, so that takes us to item 11, which is to authorize the chair to sign an agreement between Minnehaha County and JSA Engineers and Land Surveyors for construction administration. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Groen, Highway Superintendent. Back on December 27th, you authorized the project on Highway 149 that was awarded to Midwest Contracting. It's Project 1710. This is a construction agreement with JSA to perform contract administration for Minnehaha County for this project.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Steve this morning? Is there anybody here for public comment? All right, if not, I'd accept a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the design agreement.
Second, Blyenberg.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that takes us to item 12, which is to authorize the chair to sign the Second Amendment to the Joint Public Safety Answering Point Agreement.
Good morning, Tyler Clapp, Commission Office. Initially, this agreement was set to expire the end of January due to some of the construction timeline issues, as well as the removal of 908 West Avenue North from a ground lease, which impacts the titles of the property. We are asking that the commission extend the deadline out until March, I believe. Yes, March 28th, 2023.
Any questions for Tyler? Is any public comment on this item? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us to the last item on our regular agenda. It's going to be a quick meeting, I think.
Yeah, wow. Tyler Clapp, County Commission Office. The update for you today is from the first 5 or so days of the legislative session. It covers 116 bills as of January 12th. I've listed about 5 worth noting. 1042 increases treasurer fees by 100% from $1 to $2 and $5 to $10. House Bill 1050 allows the county to impose a gross receipt tax of no more than 0.5% for repairs and construction for courthouses and public safety centers and jails. House Bill 1051 would require the county to employ 2 veteran service officers if the population is greater than 4,000, and an additional 1 full-time veteran service officer for every additional 4,000 veterans in the county. Senate Bill 4 would allow the DOC to commit a child to a juvenile detention if the delinquent has committed 3 separate acts in the last 6 months. And Senate Bill 51 will increase the DOC reimbursement rate paid to counties for the detention of a parolee from $70 to $95 a day. There's one other note from the State of the Judiciary address where Chief Jensen has asked lawmakers to authorize a group to study the efficiencies and funding for the public defense system. And one other note, I suppose, none of these have been scheduled for hearing as of this morning, though I understand that House Bill 1050 is intended to be on the calendar for Thursday.
Thank you. I know once the legislative session starts, it is a wild ride for everyone. Does there anybody have any questions for Tyler?
Madam Chair, on House Bill 1051, related to our veteran service officers, do we have a count on what Minnehaha County, our number of veterans, and then what that would equate to under, if that legislation were passed, how many VSOs we would need?
Good question. So from Human Services, I understand we have about 4,000 cases that are managed. The text of the bill is the count of veterans based on the United States Department of Veteran Affairs, and that gets us around 13,000 veterans. So we're looking at a total of 4 veteran service officers, which would be an increase of 3 total.
Does that bill include any funding to pay for those additional positions?
Don't believe so.
It'd be significant for our county. So, Commissioner Karski.
Just comment on that. You know, the whole concept of veteran service officers goes back to post-World War II, when they're almost 10% of the entire population of the country was a veteran. Now we're at probably closer to 1.5%, 2%, I believe, are the most recent numbers. While the concept of a veteran service officer is a good one, I'd say we may have outlived the life of how it's managed. And in fact, I suggested this to the sponsoring legislator that instead of every county being required to have a veteran service officer, which is, some counties don't have 50 veterans in it, maybe the state should take over the VSO program and it'd be a state administered instead of a county administered program. That way they could have one central office and they could figure out how to best parse out the resources of the veteran service officers. You know, if you talk to our VSO, they would probably tell you that things are handled quite well here at this point. At least that's kind of the message that I've received. So I think the whole program should be examined, not just requiring counties to throw more resources at it. And if you look at 3 more VSOs, we're talking $250,000 cost to the county if it's not funded. I think currently they pay about $15,000 or $20,000 is what the county helps it, less than 15 of the almost 60,000 that it costs us to have a veteran service officer. So if we're going from 1 to 3 or 4, I mean, the cost to the county is huge. Our veterans deserve the support, but I have not heard complaints that they're not getting the support. So being a veteran myself, I'm really kind of have mixed emotions on this bill. I think it's antiquated in the system, and I think the concept is good, but I really feel that the whole program should be re-examined.
Thank you. Is there any comments? Does anybody like to come up to public comment to talk about any of these bills? Good morning. Just a reminder that if you're going to speak at public comment, if you could just make sure you sign.
Excuse me?
There's a sign-in sheet over by
Yes,
the
I did.
door. Yeah,
Oh.
okay.
I didn't sign in for this particular thing, but I'm John Cunningham, and I'm also a veteran, and I want to concur with Commissioner Karski. I've never used the service, and there are some, I'm sure, who desperately need service, and there should be more rather than counting me and Dean. We're not part of the need. We should, I think this situation should be more based on how many people really need the officer and have enough people for that need, and not assign people to serve people like me and Dean just because we're a number.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else on the legislative bills? Any final comments by the commissioners? All right. If not, we will move to opportunity for public comment. If there's somebody, if you'd like to speak on something that wasn't on the agenda today, this is your opportunity to come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Cindy Meyer. The entire premise of technology-based elections is based on support for the verifiable voting concept. But before designing technology for elections, we must first determine how it will empower citizen control, enabling the counting of votes in public rather than counting them in secret. We do not consent to any form of secret vote counting that is administered and controlled by government insiders and their vendors. Any system that forces a citizenry to trust government insiders to count their votes represents a change in the original design of this nation. The United States of America was designed to uphold the right of citizen sovereignty over the government. In addition to hiding the counting of votes from public view, computer-counted elections hide the chain of custody of the vote data. Citizens are never allowed to view the original input in order to compare it to the output, and are relegated to trusting circumstantial evidence controlled by insiders. Such a system is, in fact, a transfer of power. The people were never asked to approve such a transfer of power, have never consented to it, and indeed cannot consent, because the right of sovereignty over the instruments of government, which we have created, is an inalienable right which one cannot be given away, nor can this right be removed through legislation. It is admittedly possible for a government to decline the honor this right, but such an act would justify extreme measures by the people subjected to such abuse of power. It is a public counting that is key to citizen sovereignty, not computer verification. Verification of a computer report is not at all the same as public vote counting. The core of elections was, and again, must return to the principle of citizen sovereignty over government. Elections can never be based on a requirement to trust government insiders and their vendors to count our votes, nor can elections be dependent on experts to tell the citizenry that the system is okay, nor should the detailed mechanics of elections be impossible for the average citizen to understand. Models which depend on experts and insiders create centralized control and remove all control from government's rightful owners, the citizens. This represents a violation of the principles laid out in the Declaration of Independence. We will do our utmost to inform the populace that such systems must be revoked by whatever means necessary. We do not consent.
Thank you. Is there somebody else for public comment?
I'm John Cunningham, and I came here to talk about that. There are a couple of things that I think a point I agree with, that entrusting it to government officials is should not be necessary. You have paper ballots here in Minnehaha County, and paper ballots are necessary for people like the military, people who work, and truck drivers and the like, who won't be there on election day. But the problem with paper ballots is that they're bad. The most contested election in the country's history was contested on the basis of paper ballots. Everybody understood that the machines were correct. It was the paper ballots that went all the way to the Supreme Court. We recently had a situation in a county where people counting the paper ballots couldn't agree because some of the ballots are mismarked. Some would call half a bubble as a counted vote, because saying that the person obviously intended to vote for that person, and somebody else would say, no, it's clear that they changed their mind. And you can make that interpretation, and that's where I agree with putting that decision in the hands of people is just a mistake. Machines are by far the better solution. I have more experience with voting machines than anybody in this room, I'm certain. I was a precinct manager for an election using voting machines in 3 elections. And I can tell you how it works. Of course, this was 20 years ago, so the machines may have changed somewhat since then, but after the ballots were finalized, each machine was programmed for the precinct it would be in. Different state districts, different federal representative districts, commissioner districts. They had commissioners there, commissioner districts there. So each machine was then tested. I think it was 8 ballots, don't quote me on that, or sent through each machine to make sure that it was counting correctly. It was programmed for that precinct, and that the vote was correct. And then it was zeroed out, and a lead seal put on the machine, and then delivered to the day before, delivered to my precinct. And then on the morning of the election, I would unseal it, run another tape to make sure it was in fact zeroed out. And at the end of the day, I'd run another tape and compare the number of votes cast by all the machines and compare it with the people ticked off on the rolls, and to make sure they matched. And then the tapes were sent downtown, and never any connection to the internet, no way for anybody to mess with them. The fact is, there's never been a miscount by machines. The idea that there's some massive machine fraud is itself a fraud. Nobody with any ability to look at the situation and know what's going on has ever complained that the machines gave an erroneous result. There's never been a case where the machines gave an erroneous result. People give an erroneous result. When they count the ballots, that's subject to error. And so I want to say that I think Minnehaha County is approaching the size where an investment in machines for accurate counting would be of benefit to you. And you still can't avoid the errors that'll come in from paper ballots for people who are in hospitals or working in jobs where they can't vote during the day or whatever. There are a lot of good reasons for having paper ballots, but for whenever possible, machines will give you a more accurate and complete result, and I would suspect it's time for you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment this morning? All right, seeing none, that takes us to, oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Langrell. I work for Turnkey Logistics, representing Summit Carbon Solutions. I do have a few handouts if you guys would be willing to take them. I don't know if I'm allowed to hand them out for public comment, but.
You can give them to Tyler, and he'll give them to us later. Thank you.
Give you a few of these. All right, so my goal in being here today is just to give you guys some information about the project and update you on where we're at in Minnehaha County. So as far as Minnehaha County, we are at about 51% of easement miles acquired. And then in the state, we're at about 56%, and that is easement miles across the state of South Dakota. And then in these, if you guys get a chance to look over these, the number of miles, number of landowners, and the number of agreements executed are listed on there. And then I've also included a map for you guys to take a look at, just showing the pipeline where the valve stations are. There is a little legend showing where the mainline valves are located, so that can show you that information. And then as far as permitting, so as Turnkey Logistics, we were hired by Summit mainly to do non-environmental permitting, so road crossing permits, driveway permits, things like that. In Minnehaha County, we are working on the road crossing permits, so they are in the last part of the review process. They are with Summit right now. We're just waiting on approval before we submit them to the county. Trey Lester is one of our turnkey people, and he is assigned to working with your highway superintendent, zoning administrator, those types of people, just to make sure that we can follow the county's process for those permits. He is also talking with the highway superintendent about RUMAs, just to make sure that we do cross the roads as you would like to see us cross, and then that everything is taken care of after construction as well. So with that said, that's kind of the updates there. But I did want to go over, and you guys, hopefully you'll get a chance to look at this. It's a lot of information that I have on these handouts, just so you can, you can look it up yourself and see. But I know going to a bunch of counties, that's my primary job, is going to county board meetings and giving informational presentations. I've seen that the main concern is safety. So that's something that I definitely want to address. We are regulated by PHMSA at the federal level, and then we're also regulated by the PUC. So I'll just talk about PHMSA for a minute. The PHMSA code that we're regulated by is listed, and I have some of the regulations listed in these handouts as well. So if you want to on your own time, you can look these up and kind of compare and contrast to what I'm saying, make sure what I'm saying is correct. But just want to go over a couple of them. So PHMSA requires that we bury the pipeline 3 feet below the surface of the ground in fields. Summit Carbon Solutions, we are going to bury the pipeline at a 4-foot minimum. This is also negotiated with landowners. So if they want it lower, that's something we can definitely do. And then if they want it at 3 feet, which is unlikely, we could do that as well. And then let's go over some other ones. I'll talk about the X-raying. So PHMSA requires that we X-ray 10% of the welds across the pipeline project. We have committed to X-raying 100% of the welds. The pipeline will also be hydrostatically tested. This is another thing that's required by PHMSA. That requires filling the pipeline up to 125% or more of its max operating pressure, and that's for a number of hours depending on where the pipeline is, and before it's in operations, just to make sure that there are no issues with the integrity of the pipe. We're also required to fly the line just to make sure that everything is looking correct every 2 weeks or so. That's a requirement by PHMSA. And then we will also do inline maintenance and inspection with something that's called a PIG, So it will go through the line and make sure that there are no issues. And then just to talk about the valves really quick before I run out of time. The job of the valves is to, if there is any kind of leak in the pipe or pressure change or temperature change, they will shut off on each side. We will have access to those valves in Ames. There will also be people working locally that will have access to those, and there's a manual lever on them as well. So I'm running out of time, so I'll cut it there, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, anybody else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Kay Burkhart. We farm over by Valley Springs. I guess I'd like to just address a little bit about the PHMSA rules. PHMSA is the federal organization that puts down the regulations. There was an explosion of a CO2 pipeline in Satarsha, Missouri in 2020. And PHMSA has looked at that, and PHMSA has said, I guess our regulations aren't quite up to date for carbon dioxide pipeline. And so at the current time, PHMSA is looking at putting in new regulations for CO2 pipelines. The trouble is, they will not be done with those regulations by the time our PUC decides if they're going to permit this pipeline or not. So we're going to be working off of the old regulations, and if I am right, it's 50 feet from your house is the setback, and 3 feet deep. And I suppose that sounds fine as long as it's by the farm and not in town, but it's all the same people. I think that our county really needs to look at putting in place some ordinances to protect the farmers. They have worked their whole lives, worked generations to build these farms, to build the land the best it can be, and these pipelines are going to come in. They're going to move the soil from the bottom up to the top. It's going to affect our production as well as the safety thing. They are threatening us with eminent domain, and nobody can do anything about eminent domain. And so I would like to say the only thing that we can do if we have to have the pipelines, would you please look at putting some regulations for our county to protect us? Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment?
Gary Meyer, Minnehaha County. I want to remind you that this is a private company transporting a private product to a private location. There is no public benefit. There is no proven facts that we even have a CO2 problem here in South Dakota, and there's no proven facts that this will make any difference on climate change. This company and its foreign investors are telling you that they want to take control of our land through eminent domain. They don't even have to spend a dime to purchase it. They just control it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dennis Jones, Sioux Falls. I have so much on my mind, I'm going to try and make it short. Some time ago, we received a letter that says we were in the vicinity of which this pipeline was going to be in place. So we attended a meeting from another notification at the Ramcota in Sioux Falls. And when we went there, they had a table set up with different things you could pick up, and there was all different little sections of maps. And we picked up one that had our section of where a farm was in the area, not expecting it to be in the pipeline's direction. We see it's going exactly right across our land. I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this fella, and I said, good thing we came to this meeting. We wouldn't even have known this was going to go across our land. He introduced himself. He was the CEO for Glacial Alcohol Plant. So he was very quiet with me, didn't say a whole lot. Before I left, he asked me if he could have my email address. I says, yes, I would, because I said, I'm definitely opposed to this. I wasn't prepared to say anything here today. So I gave it to him. The next day I received an email from him, and I had asked him why he was going this route. They wanted to come out of that plant and head east, go across the Sioux River, go across another highway, through the Sioux River again, up the hill and across our land. Our land is very close to town. He says, well, that's the route because we don't want to go any other direction. Well, I says, you can see there's a plain straight line headed west along the railroad, and head that way. It would save you miles and miles and stay off everybody's good farmland. That's not even good land. He says, I'll look into it. He gets back to me and he says, well, we discussed this and I'll keep working on this and see if we can find another route. Finally, I received a letter from him that says, we have a different route and we're not going to be going across your place. This was back in June. Just recently, we got another letter from him that says, we're now going across your land. When they wanted to come across the land, they want to come in from the north, go south a half a mile, and then turn on the same land and go another half a mile to the west. They ruined the land 400 feet on each side as far as development. This land we have is really good land for development, but it's excellent. It's all Iowa soil. It's good farmland. They're going to ruin one of the most beautiful places, been in the family for almost 90 years. We have given up land to these high towers that went across. We gave up land to Highway 81 going across. We have given up a lot of other land for the building of the city of Watertown. We have given up all kinds of stuff, and we're not giving this up without one heck of a fight. Now, I've been going into other things and looking at them, trying to see what the big deal is. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of money. I found out Congress passed this big, huge bill, $580 billion. And from that, they got everybody scrambling to get in on this money. I won't say much more, but if you really want to look into it as commissioners, you don't need to believe me. Just go to Wikipedia and look at carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere. And it will tell you the geological time since this planet was believed to it started over 5 billion years. We have had carbon dioxide as high as over 4,000 parts per million. A part per million is 1 in 1,000,000 parts of dry air. Right now, we're at 421 as of the 2022. And at the rate we're going, they say it should increase, possibly if we don't do anything, about 2 parts per million per year. So 10 years, 2 times that, be 20, would be out to about 440. That, not even anywhere close, 40,000 or 4,000 parts per million. We have time. We don't have to be ridiculous. And the reason I'm giving you this and telling you to look at this, it talks about all the times. When
Dennis, I'm sorry, but your time is up. I have to enforce the time for everybody. Thank you for coming.
You bet.
Good morning.
What do I do? I'd like this on the screen.
Yeah, we're working on it. I've tried to get it on. Can you turn this on?
Okay. I'm Don Clausen, live 4 miles south of the city Sioux limits. Address is rural Harrisburg. Carbon dioxide is an extremely dangerous gas because it's heavier than oxygen and displaces oxygen, asphyxiating animals and humans without distinction, as well as incapacitating engines relying on oxygen. Not only is it lethal, CO2 is also colorless, tasteless, and odorless. When a CO2 transmission pipeline ruptures with over 2,000 pounds of pressure, it can spew out thousands of tons of deadly gas in seconds. Considering the city of Sioux Falls the largest city in the state and also a very rapidly growing city, having a CO2 pipeline within a few miles would potentially jeopardize the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of people, possibly killing them within a few minutes of a CO2 pipeline rupture. Any CO2 pipeline within close proximity of Sioux Falls and the surrounding towns should very definitely not be approved because many people's lives could be extinguished rapidly. Without expensive, sophisticated breathing equipment, first responders would not be able to enter a contaminated area at all without jeopardizing their own lives. The chances are slim to nil that first responders could even travel a few miles in city traffic to respond in a few minutes necessary to rescue victims. Even if they could arrive near an accident scene in time before traveling on foot, the chances of them supplying sufficient oxygen to a large number of endangered human beings is unreasonable. Overall, CO2 substantially impairs the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants. It is your responsibility as commissioners to protect the citizens in Minnehaha County. A CO2 pipeline is not suitable anywhere near the largest city in the state. Recognizing that CO2 pipeline companies have considerable financial power, I beg you, Minnehaha County Commissioners, not to be bribed nor threatened with lawsuits to approve of a CO2 pipeline anywhere in Minnehaha County, nor within 30 miles of Sioux Falls, because Brandon, Canton, Harrisburg, T, Valley Springs, and Worthing are all close to Sioux Falls. Considering that a few years ago, Lincoln County was the fastest growing city and county in the nation, I plead with you, commissioners, not to approve trenching, construction of a pipeline, and transportation of CO2 within 30 miles of Sioux Falls. And I implore you, commissioners, not to approve of such an extremely dangerous gas pipeline to be laid underground anywhere in Minnehaha County. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
I've got a video I'd like to show here.
We're not allowed to show
You're
videos
not
during
show-
public comment, sorry.
Okay, can I show pictures?
If you have a picture that you can show.
Well, what I want to do here is show some photos. I was burning some grass for an area that I want to reseed into native prairie. And I thought, you know, this is a smoke test because it goes right down the channel from our place, or the valley from our place, towards Valley Springs 5 miles away. And you can see what a little bit of smoke does, and imagine what a bursting CO2 pipeline would be.
Okay, sir, why don't, if I could get you to give me your name, and then why don't you just describe it to us, and then maybe you can provide the pictures later to the commission office, and they can get them to the commissioners.
Dennis Anderson, Valley Springs, South Dakota.
Thank you.
And I did do a little bit of research. I called, I actually emailed the South Dakota DOT and found out that exit 410 on the interstate has about 2,100 vehicles that go by there every day. Soteria, Mississippi, they have a little over 900, which is where the previous disaster that is often referred to. And anyway, when you stop and think about how much more traffic we have going along the interstate there, plus all the people and the town of Valley Springs at risk, I felt that this video and pictures that I have are pertinent. So, is there, okay, how?
If you want to send it,
I don't know if you can put it up.
I'll have you send it to us, and then,
Okay.
and then we'll share it with the commission afterwards.
Are you done with your comments, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, sorry. Commissioner.
Are you done with your comments?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else here for public comment today?
Karen Jones, Sioux Falls. I just have a couple comments. What Dennis was speaking to was the CO2 that's naturally in our air is needed for plant growth. That's just a fact. And it's not dangerous to it, but when it's condensed, it's very dangerous. This Summit company is just unscrupulous. They, for our land, this really gets me choked up because my mother's 102, and she'll be 102 in May. And she's in the nursing home, Principe's over here. I brought her down. And they unscrupulously delivered the easements to be signed to her. I have power of attorney. They know that, but that's the kind of company we're dealing with. So.
Thank you. Anyone else this morning for public comment?
My name is Alfred Slothock. I'm from Brandon, and I know that this little town in Mississippi has gotten a lot of attention in all these meetings. But what I haven't heard is that in 1986, in Cameroon, the floor, the lake bed under a lake suffered a rupture, and it released carbon dioxide into the air, and it killed 1,746 people and 3,500 head of livestock up to 14 miles away. So you people decide where to put a pipeline and tell people if they should be carrying a tank of oxygen in their car or have a gas mask. I personally am against the pipeline just because of eminent domain, but we'll see what happens in Pierre with that. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this morning? Mr. Anderson, you already had your chance to talk, so.
I got some stuff really.
You can come to our next meeting, and if there's things that you want to hand out, you could provide them to the commission office, okay? Oh. All right, anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak yet? All right, that takes us to commissioner liaison reports. Are there any commissioner liaison reports this morning? I know we've all got new commission assignments and we're just kind of getting up and running. Anyone? Commissioner Kipley?
Madam Chair, was able to go out with our highway superintendent, and it seems like our new highway building is getting closer and closer. Got a tour of that facility. It's going to be a great facility for our folks out there. Just kind of some final finishing touches and whatnot, but I'm hoping a future liaison report will be able to tell you that it's fully up and running, but not quite yet.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Karski?
I guess not a liaison report, but non-action discussion is where
Okay.
if anybody else liaison report.
Any other liaison reports people want? Okay, let's go to non-action commission discussion. Commissioner Karski.
A couple things. When we talk about commission action and pipelines, we don't get to permit CO2 pipelines, so we really don't have a whole lot of power in this struggle, I guess. We all might have varying opinions, but that's probably more of a comment for open public comment on my part. The one thing I do want to talk about is on our calendar, we have a couple of meetings. We have Friday the 20th and Monday the 30th, Fairgrounds Task Force meetings. I just want the public to be aware of them. Carol, can you tell, maybe you're more up to speed on this than I am, who's conducting them, where they're going to be, the topics, that type of thing.
Sure. We have a series of about a dozen meetings set that are 90 minutes long over a lunch hour. They start anywhere between 11 and 11:30, depending upon people's schedules. And we'll be meeting up here and going through a variety of things. This Friday, the family will come in and talk about things. We'll probably talk some about governance of different things, and get a kickoff started with that. And then my goal is to move into some financials. We've got a variety of topics that we'll be covering, including some conversations with different fairs as to how they operate and what they do. And we'll be moving forward. We're scheduled through the end of March.
Okay. And again, these are meetings that are open to the public. I know there's a lot of interest in our fairgrounds, so just want to get the word out.
Thank you. Any other non-action commission items? All right.
Madam Chair, just
Kipley.
one quick item, just a moment of personal privilege to thank my family. I forgot that last time they left after the swearing in, but it's quite apt because my daughters pronounce what my new job here as the county omission. So it's apt that I forgot to thank them for being here. But it's about 2 weeks ago now, it was an honor to be sworn in as a new commissioner, and just wanted to thank my wife, my parents, some friends, and my 2 daughters that now have me as an official county omissioner. So thank you.
Congratulations. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. To recess, I'm sorry, a motion to recess into executive session. Thank you so much.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We will reconvene in executive session, maybe 5 minutes? Yep. In here? Next.